Hello guys, how's everybody doing today? Hi everyone. So I'm just lining up the submissions for the challenge. There seems to be an issue with the resolution everyone submitted in. So this is the, right here. So this is the resolution, like for this one. Like take a look. This isn't high res. I'm not sure if subreddit uh decrease the or compress the quality, but they seem to be really low quality. As soon as I zoom in, yeah, I think everybody posted it a little small, right? Uh, well, we'll see. I could be wrong. I could be just doing it wrong, but I'm pretty sure everyone posted it a little small. Let me do a quick announcement for today's class. Okay. You posted high quality, but it got compressed. Ah, that's too bad. I wonder why it's doing that. That's really upsetting. Um, but it is what it is. I don't think, yeah, I don't think it works. But let's just get started. Let's do this. So I hosted a challenge on my subreddit community. To find that, all you got to do is go to istabrack.com and click on the subreddit icon right here. We also have an open public Discord community. We have a private Discord community for patrons, but I do have a public Discord community. Like, you guys can just join it just like that. I'll be one meme away. It won't be too difficult to just find me, get a hold of me, all that stuff. I don't make myself like impossible to get a hold of. Right here, and also our Discord is one way for you guys to submit your art for critique. But yes, go to the subreddit community. That'll take you to my subreddit where people submit their work for critique. This is where I brought all of the pieces that I'll be taking a look at today. Pieces that were submitted to the Floral Creature Design Challenge. So usually where I host a floral humanoid design challenge, meaning like a floral character. But this time I turned it into a creature, which is a little bit more cool, a little bit more interesting. I noticed not a lot of you joined, but enough people joined so that I could host the critique hour today. And the winner for the challenge is this artist. I think that they really continuously posted. They showed they put a lot of thought and time into it. They did a lot of research. They did so many cool little designs, and I can definitely see the influence from either end. They picked a daylily. I believe for the final, it is the daylily that they settled for. And they combined it with a creature, which is really cool. They took this route. It's kind of like a raptor type or a cute little chicken type setup. So I really like that. I like how they stayed true to the muscles, that stayed true to the flexibility and the spine and all of that. So that's why I selected them as the winner. It shows a lot of thought, a lot of passion behind it, a lot of thinking, and that's really what you are as an artist. You're an explorer, you're an architect, you are building, you're also a biologist, you're a botanist, you're a chemist, you're doing so many different you're engaging in so many different fields of research. So I think it's really important that when you guys are working with clients, working with customers, working with any kind of project that requires the creation process or the world building process, you don't forget that. You don't forget that there's a lot of background tasks for you to look at, and it should be fun for you. I truly think every artist has a scientist in them. I truly think every student of art, there's a field of science they are genuinely naturally drawn into. Um, I think it's my running theory, and every day I'm proven right. And every day I see an art, I can see the stuff that they're interested in, the kind of questions they ask, the way that they look at the world. So when you find that inner scientist, find that field of study that you want to pursue, you start noticing that it's related directly to the type of art you draw, the type of way, the way that you think, and the way that you see your art, and what type of thing that you know, because I'm into, let's say for instance, let's use me as an example. I would say I'm a student of human psychology. I took it in school. It was it was like a minor in my English studies and my literature studies. A lot of my classes were focused on psychoanalysis and psychology. And I look at the portraits that I draw and the type of characters that I draw and the type of emotions that I pour into my characters and the type of, like, the time that I spend building dimensions of emotion in my portraits. So that really goes hand in hand, as you can see. Also, some of my sketches are really floral. Some of my sketches I'm naturally drawn to the organic leaf pattern. And it's another field of study that of mine that I really, really am passionate about, which is botany and plant biology. So find that part of yourself. That's really what these challenges are for. Find that part of yourself, because you will naturally want to draft all these different designs and look at all the different possibilities and generate iterations, world build, layer different designs together, thinking basically from the cell out. And the cell structure out. I really think a lot of you have that dormant. You just haven't explored it yet. And challenges like this really help you find that inner version, that inner Da Vinci inside all of us. So that's really how I'm gonna take a look at this today. I'm gonna take a look at all these pieces through that lens and see the creation process. We're gonna start with the winner. The winner unfortunately couldn't join me today, but I really love the effort they poured into this. So I would say right off the bat, the thing that I love about it is the flexibility. And when you look at a daylily, oopsie, wrong brush. When you look at a daylily, you see all these really sharp, long leaves that come out around it. I've been actually fighting my own patch of daylilies for a while. They're very, very aggressive, and they take over anywhere. They're very predatory, invasive plant. And I think it is identified as an invasive local kind of plant in my area. So I really like how you captured that. You captured that natural sharpness of the daylily. But I think you did that too much. I think we're seeing skinny, skinny, skinny. Like for a while, we're seeing the same thickness for too long. Whereas if you look at the blade of a daylily, it kind of tapers. So I would love to see that tapering effect happening somewhere here. You got the petals right. Or I guess you're calling it the sepal. But I believe you did call it that in your description. I can't tell which ones you're treating as the petals and which ones you're treating as the sepal. Maybe this is the carpel. I'm not sure how you're going. I did not read through the specifics of every single post you posted, but I would love to see some tapering. This just looks too tubular. It looks too mechanical. It looks too much like, like a mechanical tube inside some kind of machine or apparatus of some kind. It doesn't really read as organic. We don't really see these types of tubes. Even roots of a plant and even like branches go from thick to thin. So that's one of those natural patterns you want to follow. This also happens again with the straight tail that you have. So anytime we're seeing straight lines, continuous thickness everywhere, that's when things start to get a little weird. Then there's the head size. So I would have, if it was my design, not that it needs to be, exactly the way I do it, but I would have enlarged the head and shrunken the body. The reason I do that is because it's all about how is this creature locating its prey? How is it luring in its prey? How does it kill its prey? Clearly, there is no jaw structure. So when you think about a raptor and you think about the head of a raptor, you think about a really strong jaw, right? Really, really strong jaw, really strong neck, strong upper body. Its hands really don't do, or front legs don't really do that much. Its head and its neck do all the work. So clearly, this creature is not biting anything. It's maybe poisoning. It's maybe creating some kind of webbing. That's what it's coming off as. So if you want to make it look like it's got the same biting power as a raptor, you might want to enlarge the head. And so I'm just going to quickly apply these changes, and that might help you make better decisions with your creature designs moving forward, because when you think creature, you do have to think function. And you do have to think about the actual day-to-day life, the day-to-day life of this creature. How does it go about its life? So if you were to include some magical element, even at that point, that wouldn't be like a cop-out. A magical element is a very go-to kind of, let me just explain myself by saying it's just magical. It's a very standard excuse a lot of artists use to get out of having to world build too much. But sometimes magic also has to be explained. Can't just be, people are much smarter consumers these days and much smarter at kind of catching those kind of cheap designs. So I don't see much magical reliance here. I don't see that. But I do see that the kind of use of beauty, kind of relying too much on beauty to get away with the missing element of function. So that's what I would want to see replaced with function. Most of the beauty you have is enough. There really doesn't need to be more beauty invested. Let's try to bring some function back. So maybe the physical body of the raptor, but we have the magical presence of the daylily in that it is a flower. You don't see that much in nature. You don't see like some people argue the Venus flytrap, but even then, no, that's a flower. It's not a half creature. We don't really have half creatures. The closest thing we have to that is fungi, but at that point, that's a whole other ball game. So that's magical in and of itself to have an actual floral like circulatory system and all of those, like photosynthesis actually combined with a flower, that's with a creature, that's actually magical as a concept. So all I'm doing is trying to create more of an organic root-like taper over here. So that's magical in and of itself. Let some of the biology back in. We have enough plant happening. Short way to say it is we have enough plant. Let's bring some animal back in the game. And then I'm just going to try to create more of a kind of irregular shape to the petals. Okay, so I enlarged the head just a touch, and it still feels a little bit small. Let's shrink the body toward the head. And that way it can be a bit more balanced. It was a bit imbalanced, even outside of all the biology talk. It felt a little bit imbalanced, just at face value. Okay, so now it feels like, there's something there to look at when it comes to the portrait, or sorry, when it comes to the body of the creature. And we have a bit less like a tube and more like an actual root. And I'm just going to try to add your cylindrical indication there. The next thing I'm going to do is, so after, you see how off those sizes were? You can see it now a little bit better. Very, very small on the head, almost like it doesn't really matter. Maybe it doesn't. Maybe it's just something that lures in and poisons. How does this creature consume? We don't want to get too technical with it, obviously. But I think whatever you intended, it ended up reading as eyes, a snout, teeth, and a mouth for the floral kind of body here. And especially these plumes here that look like what we saw with the raptor reference. If you didn't want it to be interpreted as creature-esque in any way on that area, if you had just done it like that, that would have been cool in and of itself. I thought I did see an iteration of this design in your concepts. That alone would have gone a long way. But the fact that you added this extra bit, you know, it needs to be treated with the size of a head. That's just how the human eye is going to work. That's what it's expecting. So maybe if we find a compromise between those two elements, so maybe we make the head, we get rid of that neck, which really is taking away the volume, and we add that head right into the, oopsie, 15. We add that head right in and around all those petals. So we kind of just let it tuck in underneath, just there. So the head is there, but the petals are more of a mane, which might not be something you want to do. But as the viewer, as the person on the receiving end of the design, it felt like a lot of stuff was really, really well painted, but it wasn't quite, it was a bit imbalanced. So if you really had to have that head and the, I believe I'm not sure which one you meant as the stamen and which one as the carpel, the male and female parts of the plant. So maybe just tucking it in just there, then it feels more like a mane. But honestly, this alone is very, very beautiful. There might have been other, you know, instances where you could have made that whole carpel a little bit more vertical maybe, or maybe just pluming out just there without the head. We don't want to, we want to read more creature, like floral creature, than animal creature. That's what we want to pick up. Whenever you are combining anything with floral, anything with elements that are more abstract, let's say you're making a fungi monster, you really want to go for more plant than human. Like for instance, the fungi zombies from The Last of Us. Some of those designs are really, really cool because the whole head is just a piece of, it's just a mushroom. And I think that's what makes it more creepy, because it's like it's not really malicious. It's just plant life. It's just as cruel as plant life, as cruel as Mother Nature is. So not having a creature face makes it a little bit more eerie. There's nothing really to get to know. There's nothing really to look at. But I love the way that you kind of balanced the design of the flower and like the silhouette of the flower with the body of the raptor. I think that was a great choice. And then finally the tail. I just want to make the tail a part of the design somehow. And then we'll take a look at the after. So again, these are just my suggestions. If I was an art director in a game that was creating creatures out of flowers, and it's just like a level or some kind of God of War game, I would definitely make these changes. These are the changes that I feel like would really need to happen right away. All right, so this looks like it's one of those basic creatures that you know, like a starting creature. Doesn't look too much like a boss creature. Somewhere at the beginning of the game or the beginning of the floral level, or some kind of other world. And then we have that final pass where we go through. This is something I personally do, and just completely distort things as like general motions. So you'll see what I did in a second. So the motions of my liquefy are like this. Okay, so down, up, down. What this creates is a more pronounced gesture. So if I feel like my artists are being too modest with their gestures, I try to show them that the line of motion or the gesture line is more important than the creature design. meaning all the little scales and all the little feathers. And you can put that, but if you put all those details on a box, it's still going to be a box. You can keep throwing on beads and sparkly items, and it's still going to be a box. So the best and most important step to take is the gestural stage. So right here, what the last pass that I did, that was the gesture, that was the silhouette. That's the thing that animators think about. Why are animators like the gods of art? Why are they the gods of what they do? I will always have the greatest respect for them because they always think about function and animation before they think about detail. Even while they're drafting, they're only animating the big parts. They're always animating with the gesture in mind, and they're always thinking about the walk cycle. How does that gesture incorporate into the walk cycle? And that's how you get the best creatures. So I imagine this part swinging up and down. I imagine the back legs doing most of the work, just like you see with a raptor. They had a really nice head swing in those Jurassic Park movies, and that's really what made it feel like this is a real dinosaur in front of us. This is a real creature in front of us. It's the walk cycle that makes it feel very, very real. So when you think about this thing stalking, hunting, hiding, camouflaging in a field of flowers, let's say there's just a bunch of flowers, and all you see is just another flower, but it's a little bit different from the others, and only like a gifted explorer would know, or a gifted botanist would know that they're being stalked by a raptor flower, and then it just pops its head out and just rushes at you. So these are the things you're thinking about while you're designing, while you're applying these really, really strong gestural lines. So let me show you what it looked like before the gestural shift, just before that change. Very, very modest. Do you see that? A little bit more stalkerish, aggressive here, a little bit more on its, you know, a little bit more creepy. And so I did that first motion, and I just want to show that this foot here is holding all of that weight up. So I'm just going to give this foot a little bit more size, just so it looks like that weight, that entire weight, that line of weight right here is being supported somehow. So it really looks like it's stepping down. So if you are passionate about creature designs, I know not a lot of artists are these days. It's mostly characters. It's trends. It happens in waves. We're going to get another wave of creature design soon enough. It happened a lot with, you know, with my generation, that DeviantArt generation. There was a huge obsession with creature design like 10 years ago. And then character design came in, and then that was the popular. And now it's portrait and kind of like busts and characters and all of that. And then I think the latest thing is just little comic strips. I think at some point creature design is going to come back. There's another straight line here that I really want to adjust so it doesn't look too straight. And you have a lot of random straight lines that don't work when you're thinking about organic creatures. You have to be careful with those straight lines. They're really only small runs of bone structure or smaller parts really need those straight lines. Okay, so I think here it's really been perfected, and this is where it was before, and these are with my changes, and you can bring in that head back even just to hang out here. You can bring it back, but at that point it feels like a creature design that's more animal than flower. But if you get rid of the head, I feel like it's more flower than creature, because the head, it's such an important part of our, that's a really bad drawing. It's such an important part of the way we identify anything, even if it's a cat person or an actual cat. We identify things with the bust up, and if you get rid of that and replace it with a flower, then that's it. That's the thing. That's the whole thing in and of itself is the flower. So if you get rid of the head, you'll have the force, or the moving force, the propelling force of the design be mostly flower than creature. You don't have to rely on creature bust for any aspect of the design. And that's how you get it to read more as a floral being, a creation. Okay, so moving on. This one was really cool. This one had sketches, and this one had like a hand-drawn look. I really, really like it. A lot of you are relying on making a head that looks more like it's a dressed up with plant life. than actually having, I don't know why it compressed all the images. I'm sorry. Let me enlarge it. Than having that thing that actually reads as a plant that has just this sentience to it. Not sentience, but like, close to it, like animal-like consciousness. I really like how it reads as a baboon. It reads as a lemur. It reads as some kind of jumping a mammal of some kind. Not mammal, is it? Is it mammal? No, it's a primate. So you called it an orchid tree devil, which is really cool because orchids do rely on some kind of media to grow. I think it's called an epiphyte. I'm not sure. It's like a parasitic, but not an evil parasitic plant. So if you're gonna go for that, how are you representing that? So if it's a tree that's, if it's a plant that needs to rely on a tree to live, just like the orchid, that must mean that it's always really, really attached to its tree. I like that you picked the lemur base design. It does really work because you never see those things very, very far away from their environment, which is trees and shade of trees, branches. It's a really, really cool starting point. Maybe you could have pushed it further. Maybe you could have made it so that some part of the plant creature, which is mostly plant than creature, or mostly plant than animal, could have mimicked that same behavior as an orchid. An orchid is very grounded. It's stuck where it grows, whereas a lemur jumps around everywhere. So you had a bit of a challenge to find the middle ground between both of those things. And I think that's why you gave it so much poison. These are just the things that are jumping out to me. It's got camouflage, so that means it's kind of a lightweight. Maybe it feeds off, maybe it defends itself with this kind of poisonous bite. These are all very, very poison-like appendages here. The fangs, the tongue, the coloring. It feels like it's a very, very poisonous thing. You don't want to be on the receiving end of any of this, or venomous, sorry. So what I would say is maybe getting rid of the claws in some way. Maybe it doesn't need those if it's got poison, because you don't really find animals that are that venomous to have this kind of also additional defense. Maybe doing something where there's more media involved, so they find little areas where there's, maybe because orchids grow on the lower kind of foot levels of the forest, whereas monkeys grow on that, not grow, but live on the height of the trees. So you really are working with opposites when it comes to the creature and the plant. But I like how you found the middle ground. Really, really interesting design. At this point, I would love to see them in some kind of movie or show or game. Really, really cool stuff. One thing that I would change again is just to reduce the amount of animal presence. So over here we're looking at a tail, an entire like 40-30% of the design to be animal. And that's kind of what we're looking at when we looked at the raptor as well. So how do you go about that? What is it exactly I'm talking about? I'm mostly talking about finding a way to create a creature that looks like it's still photosynthetic. Meaning that it has some kind of continuation between, that upper main area that you guys are adding on and the root system on the bottom. So these creatures, which are like bridging the gap between animal and creature, still display some of the inner biology and the inner workings and the inner physiology, let's say, of a plant, even in their creature form. And it's a tall order. You'd have to go right back down to the cell structure and maybe think about how it feeds. Where does it hang out? Does it need photosynthesis for some of its qualities? It is a very big challenge because you're talking about something that can feed itself versus something that feeds on other things. It no longer really needs photosynthesis, but that's the challenge. And the challenge is that you're finding something in between. Claws and all these mammalian, it just feels like it's more creature. It's a creature that has we've seen this a lot in nature, a creature that looks like the plants it evolved beside. We've seen that a lot in the way creatures camouflage. So this feels less like a floral creature that is like, you know, like a that's made like it's still photosynthetic. It still has all of the circulatory system and all of the photosynthetic kind of leaves and the layers of the leaf and I feel like that's the kind of tissues inside leaves and inside the main stem and the roots and how it collects water. Not a full plant, but still has some element of it. And that would have been really cool. I'm still looking for that version of this design, but I really, really love even just standalone outside the requirements of the challenge. This design is beautiful. I love the way you curled the tongue. It really does look very, very venomous. The look in the eyes and the extra set of eyes to kind of scare away anything that might attack it. It's almost like a moth. The way the moth defends itself, it opens its wings and it has like two eyes, making it look like a scary monster to anything that might want to eat it. Really, really cool stuff. I love the color. I love the way you've painted it. I love this repeating texture. It's really, really beautiful. It's really well done. I love this repeating pattern that you have that's looking like something out of a James Gurney creature design book. Whatever technique you used to push all these colors together is really, really amazing. I wish you recorded this. I would love to see the full process of this piece here. Okay, here we have something that's a little bit closer to what I'm talking about, which is a creature that still looks like it feeds itself. It kind of through photosynthesis. Um, 1 second. Okay. Okay, so what I want to see more of is just less reliance on giving it eyes. Sometimes that just slows down the drawing. It just keeps the drawing from feeling like a creature. So imagine you're a botanist and you're exploring this alien planet for the very first time. You've seen this plant already. You're still in the area where this plant exists and you're just kind of hanging out in that part of the forest. All of a sudden, one of these plants just starts moving. And turns out that this planet has like a gray area between plant life and animal life. And it's just this part animal, part creature, part, part plant thing that you have running around, camouflaging in between. And it is photosynthetic. It's growing actual leaves with actual plant cells inside it. And it actually has a need to tap into some water through its tail, and it just hangs out, bringing in all this water through its tubes and through its through the leaves, pulling them all up and actually processing sunlight. And that's really what I'm looking for. And I love how you had leaves growing out of the plant, of the animal. So it like kind of, I think a lizard would definitely be the contender for like the middle ground between creature and plant. I don't know why, lizard just really works. So that's why I really like the raptor choice. But yeah, I feel like this really does make a lot of sense. It being a lizard, kind of low to the ground. It still lives as ground cover, but it has a stomach. It has a way to digest. It still leaves behind droppings. It still has a mouth somewhere where it processes all of these things that it locks in here. So you see a lot of like pitcher plants, for instance, they attract ants up into this area where it has some nectar, and they fall inside. It creates like a big acid pool where it processes all of the food, and that's how it feeds itself. So that looks like something that it does here. Maybe it grounds itself, starts sucking up the water through its leaves. It has kind of a protective sheathing, just like we see in plants, and it's got something to attract all of the ants to it. It's low to the ground, so they'll quickly find it. It traps them in here, and they go down into the stomach. And I'm really liking what I'm seeing, kind of like a middle ground. I really think a newt or a lizard is really the first thing we'd see if there was ever a middle ground between animal and plant. So you can see how we don't really need the eyes. We don't really need the eyes anymore. It doesn't really need to hunt. It just needs to stay where it is, locate to other areas, leave its droppings behind, go to another area. I'm sure it has some level of, interaction with the ecosystem it lives in, changes its areas, digs a little bit. Of all of the ones, I think this one really got the idea of finding that middle ground between. I love the leaves growing off of it. And I love how you managed to incorporate some kind of grounded tail. That if I were looking for roots for this half plant, half creature, I would find them there. I love seeing how you guys put your minds into these things. I love seeing how you guys reveal your knowledge of plant and animal life. It's really, really cool. And as they say, whatever we imagine exists somewhere. So I'm pretty sure that all these things you guys created exist in some planets in this cosmos somewhere. Okay, this one is really, really adorable. I'm just looking for the star. That's not letting me see all of the it's not letting me see all of the things in high res, unfortunately, which is really, really annoying. I'm not sure why. Could you guys answer? Do you guys know why it may not be allowing me to see them? All right, so I just wanted to pull up the references. So I think you picked a I think this is a crocus. I could be wrong. You picked the one in the middle. I think it is a different type of crocus. So what I have, Crameria lapacia. And you picked an otter. I see. So this here, it reads more as obviously like a sea creature. Doesn't read as plant. The plant isn't coming through. And you're not technically picking an aquatic plant. So how do we still get all of those underwater elements but keep the plant feeling like a a plant? So if I were doing this, I would definitely start with the original flower and then consider how might this flower swim through the a body of water. So I would see it flapping these things, so it would look more like those. Is it a sea slug? There's this adorable sea creature that kind of propels itself. It looks like a tiny ghost. I don't know if you guys have ever seen it. And this is basically the two frames of its animation. So like it kind of raises its skirt up and then it pushes and then it creates a force and it moves forward. So I'm thinking if I were to have to turn this into a creature, this is where I would start. I would kind of see how would this plant propel itself through the ocean? How does it feed? And those are the questions you answer. How does it move and how does it feed? And when I study biology, those are the two things we're always asked to look out for. How does it feed itself and how does it move? How does it move? If it moves, then it's a plant. I mean, then it's an animal. If it doesn't move, then it's a plant. Obviously, these things are all there's gray areas in between, and taxonomy developed differently throughout the years. So we can still rely on some of the old ways that they, as artists anyway, that they identified plants versus animals, and we're trying to find a gray area in between with these designs. So here it feels like its reliance isn't on its plant self. It's not really moving based off its plant self. It's moving based off its animal self, which is okay. We've seen that through all the pieces submitted: the lemur, the raptor, and the lizard. And here we have like an otter. So you have to try to kind of explore a little bit more, open it a little bit wider in your mind. How can it move if it had no animal appendages? If it had no spine, would it still be able to move, especially if it's underwater? So here it doesn't really read as plant. How do we make it read as a plant more than an animal? I would probably not give it any kind of spine. I would probably just try to mimic the same leaf pattern you have everywhere else. Because it just feels like a species of otter that we haven't discovered yet. instead of a plant that lives underwater, surrounded by, you know, like all these kinds of coral bodies, surrounded by, disguised very much as a plant, but oops, but definitely not fully creature. Okay. So just throwing in more of these little sections here, trying to show that it relies on currents to move, not so much on its animal self. So always give this kind of option a chance, because it will read a little bit more differently than just a full-on creature design, a full-on just a new version of an animal. We've seen that a lot, you know, just a new animal. We've seen a lot of those for shows, movies, games, but we barely see stuff that reads as an actual independent plant creature. Like it doesn't need too much of the animal cop out to make it look like a look like a proper design. So I would place a little bit more here. Things are getting a little bit repetitive. I would place a little bit more here, and then I would try to mimic those first two, those essential ones, and maybe get rid of the tail, or have multiple tails, multiple green tails, and it kind of just propels itself upward. If it was supposed to like it was deliberately otter-like, if we go back to the otter is very agile, very quick. So is the shrimp, and so maybe each one of these little oopsie, each one of these little feet, or whatever they are, I'm just going to call them feet, could have been a petal that propels forward. So you have a chance here to throw all the petals in one spot. And then you have, of course, the mane of that plant. And then you kind of would get rid of the spine, or you would just leave some kind of braking system that it evolved. And so you're starting, and then again, of course, where it grounds itself, where it taps in to recharge, where it eats off the surface of the you know, the bed of the lake or the bed of the sea. So always ask, how is it moving? It's moving by propelling itself with its petals underwater. How does it feed? It feeds by opening out its tentacles, which are like roots, and they make contact, or it just, you know, sucks in all of those, what are those tiny little sea, I forget what they're called, the tiniest, I can't believe I forgot what they're called. I just studied them. The tiniest little sea creatures that, you know, the bottom of the food chain in the ocean. And that would be how it functions. But it also has elements that are like water filtration. Krill, thank you. It has water filtration. It feeds by opening out its petals. It maybe has a stomach, or maybe multiple stomachs. It leaves behind fecal matter. So I'm not asking you to be complete scientists, but I also want you guys to create these designs that are not always going to have some kind of cute animal cop-out. If you want to create more sophisticated creatures that feel very believable, tap into that inner scientist and see how you can, how if you were to create this, if you had the power of creation, how would you answer those questions? And I see something like the head of the plant being the creature itself, and it lives off these algae or seaweed type bodies inside the ocean. But it also, again, filters just like some plant life does in the ocean. It filters through and gets all of its nutrients from the surrounding concentration in the ocean. What I love about this design is the color choice. I love the way you added the colors. I love the way that you balance the colors. I love the way that you reflected the daylight off the eyes. Those are all wonderful. Just remember that if you were ever hired to create these types of designs, you have to think a bit further than the creature. You have to start thinking about the plant. It's mostly plant than animal anyway, because it's a floral creature design. So we're starting with the plant and then adding where we really need it, animal elements. But I love the reflection of the light here. You did that so well. And the reflection of the light right on top of the crown there. Really, really, really beautiful. I think you are trying to mimic how otters have rocks that they favor, right? I love the way you did the subsurface scattering inside and you brought in the same daylight on all of these elements here. They all look really, really great. As a standalone outside of the floral influence, I'm not sure what's happening with the tail. Maybe you could have explored the tail a little bit more, maybe made it a little bit more of a kind of like have a purpose, maybe a defense or something like that. Just giving the tail something because it's kind of almost the same size as the mane, and that's taking attention away from it. So give it something else, give it another job than just distracting the viewer from the main beautiful part of the design. So maybe just shrinking it out of the way would have helped drag the eyes away from the tail, as you can see here. So now it's just a little bit out of the way before, yeah, my eyes are going right to that. And then the green here feels a little bit less like, maybe if you really had to, you could make it more translucent like you did here. So you brought basically the background value, you brought it in and made it look a bit more translucent all the way around. So that could have been something that you did to make it look a little bit less like lizard-like and a little bit more on the side of translucent. Like every part of this thing, it's deep underwater, would have some kind of translucency. And you can see its organs a little bit. It's just a little bit lacy, a little bit translucent. And that might also have helped you step away from the animal and go towards the plant. And I think when it comes to the plant, the circulatory system and its ability to photosynthesize are like two requirements to have a floral creature. Can it feed itself? So that's the requirement here. And then for animal, does it have a stomach? Those are the things I think, like scientifically, if I was like a botanist in an alien planet and I started kind of trying to categorize all the stuff I was finding, that's where I would start. Even the moving question isn't enough of a discernment between plant basic and animal basic, and then the middle ground. I would be like, can it both feed itself and feed on other things? And so I think if you had shown a tiny little stomach in there, that would have been so cute also. But also showing how it's translucent and how it can feed itself, maybe with some kind of algae-like translucency. It would have made a lot of sense. And maybe showing some more veins, showing some kind of root system right here. That would have been a really, really cool addition. But I love how it also looks like a shrimp. I like how you tapered organically, just like I talked about at the start of the lecture. You tapered things in an organic way. I would taper even more just so we have a little less attention towards that far end. If you were basing it off the shrimp is very like bulky at the start of the design and very thin at the end. And so if you kind of oversized the start of the shape and thinned out and shrunk every other element, it would have been a nice way for us to focus strictly on that design, that aspect of the design around the main and the focal point, instead of just the balancing those two and having to share the focal point with those two. Sorry, I'm losing my sentences. So before, after, adding just a little bit of translucency might encourage representing its photosynthetic nature, and then just shrinking just for design's sake, getting rid of that part right here. If you want to step away from creature even more, you can get rid of the neck and the spinal column and the head and just kind of make it all one continuous shape, one continuous bulky shape. But we've seen seals also not really have necks, so that wouldn't really do much. but trying to interrupt the whole head main thing, showing that some of these areas here have full-on leaves growing out of them. So if it came down to it, maybe in the winter time or something like that, it would only feed on other things in the winter time. It would mostly feed off sunlight and other elements in the summertime when it's closer up and hibernates closer to the surface of the water, getting some light in. It's green, so that must mean it's pretty close to the surface of the water. When things lose their color, that's when they're moving away from the water, deeper in the ocean. You don't really see green stuff in the ocean. That chlorophyll is no longer necessary. They just feed off stuff. Everything in the, deeper in has that animal-like heterotrophic type of feeding on carnivorous type of look. So that would have been cool. Some more leaves, just underwater algae, maybe even in the shape of algae, just kind of lingering off of it somewhere. I'll just do something like that. Just to show us it can feed itself, anything like that, just to show that algae kind of is the middle ground, making this creature look more like an underwater plant, and obviously borrowing from that. So I know I said pick one flower just for this design, but I think that you guys can afford to throw in some leaves, since the flowers come with leaves, an underwater equivalent of leaves. I think the closest thing you have is like algae, or some kind of seaweed of some kind. It's not kale. What's that other one that starts with a K? I can't believe I'm so forgetful today. Krill? No, it's not krill. It's the other thing. Krill is what you guys just said. It's not kale. It's the other thing. Kelp. Thank you so much. Oh, I keep forgetting things today. Moving on. I would love for you guys to make these changes, by the way. Having portfolio pieces that have this much thought in them is really, really good for you. It's really good to show that you have all this noted somewhere. It makes for a stronger artist represented in your portfolio than just another cute little creature. If you show, hey, this isn't just a creature design, this is a floral creature, meaning that I had to find a way to combine the sciences of plants and the science of animals and find that middle ground and represent it artistically. That's sophisticated AF. So you guys can really benefit from having a little description in your portfolio, showing the thought you put into this. So go back and make some of these edits if you really want to build a strong character design portfolio. This is the stuff. This is the stuff that separates you from the rest. This kind of deep thinking, rumination on how it feeds, how it moves, that shows deep research, that shows deeper thinking, philosophy behind world building. It's all good for you. Okay, and finally we have an orchid bat, so a flying floral creature. I really like the concept. I really like the concept. You have to think again about all the questions I just asked. So it feeds itself. Does it rely on the tree? How does it travel from one area to another? Does it glide less like a bat? Maybe does it hang upside down? What aspect of it is the animal and what aspect of it is the plant? So we've answered that. Maybe it has a stomach. Maybe it needs to catch insects just like a bat would, but it also needs to stop somewhere where there's sunlight and feed itself. If it's a bat, how does it feed itself? At night, those types of questions. When you answer those questions, they create design opportunities. It feeds itself at night. It doesn't need sunlight to photosynthesize. An orchid, funny enough, doesn't need sunlight at all. If you put an orchid in full sunlight, I mean, it needs sunlight, but if you put it in full sunlight, it gets burned and the plant loses its ability to feed itself. It burns the leaf. An orchid thrives in the shade. So what do we have here? Well, we have a night creature like a bat and a plant that doesn't need much sunlight. And so you could say it hides in the lower depths of the forest. It feeds off the plant, it feeds off insects. Anything that survives on the lower levels of the forest most likely feeds off insects. And anything that's traveling up the trees feeds off animal, like bigger creatures. It must feed on lower, smaller creatures. If it's living so low in the forest, it must not need to really get that much altitude. It doesn't need to fly that high to catch its insects. So maybe it's just gliding. Maybe it is a bat-like kind of wraps itself like an orchid before blooming. So right before it blooms, an orchid has a really adorable little wrapping look. So it looks like a chrysalis when it's hanging upside down. So maybe this bat, when it's in its state of rest, it just looks like an unbloomed orchid hanging off a branch. But when it opens up, it glides from one area to another with its orchid leaves, and then lands somewhere where there are insects, traps them really quickly with its nectar or something like that, or some kind of venom or some kind of something, where what's that shit that they spew out? What's it called? Mucus? I don't know. It probably just does something to trap it, and just like a Venus flytrap, instead of it going inside, the fly going inside the Venus flytrap, the orchid hangs out on the bottom of the forest floor, digesting the insect really quickly, and then finding its way back up somehow, flying back upward. It's not a full plant. It's not completely plant, helplessly plant. It does have animal aspects to it, so it can flap its wings back up, hide over here, and photosynthesize the rest of its food requirement. Just like an orchid would, and maybe it taps into a leaf. An orchid is technically parasitic, meaning that it lives off another plant's nutrients. So it hangs out on the bark or media of a tree or maybe the forest floor, and those air roots that it has, really, really big, chunky roots, need to be constantly watered. And if they're watered, they can take in nutrients from the surrounding landscape. So not just water, but like nutritious water. So maybe it finds somewhere, taps its little feet inside the branch, and where the branch of the tree were to send that nutrient to itself, instead it gets bypassed by the bat and goes towards the bat. Those are the types of things that we want to see in your submissions. Like, these are the things you want to see in your portfolio. I know I'm saying submission, but after the challenge is done, you guys have a portfolio piece. And so this is the type of stuff we would want to see. If I was hiring a creature design artist and I was looking for the best of the best, and I see that, that you've drawn the phloem and the xylem, and you've shown how it gets bypassed by that little stabby thing on the bottom of the plant, or the top of the little bat orchid. You're showing how the leaves kind of unravel. You're showing a cross section of where the head or the mouth is hanging out and where the rest of the thing is inside. You're showing it to scale. You're showing what happens when it's on the forest floor. This is creature design. Creature design it's like you already found the creature. You're a botanist in an alien landscape. You've already found the creature. You're just analyzing it. That's like the best type of creature design art that I have ever found, that I've ever looked at. They look at things as a scientist would. And I think that's like the biggest takeaway today. If you just sit there and just use your art skills to build these kind of little scientific observations, and you kind of have little written notes here, and you're showing how it taps in and how it propels itself back upward. It catches a breeze. It waits for a breeze. It throws a couple of petals upward after it's done feeding. It catches a breeze, and then the breeze kind of tosses it, and then it starts flapping its wings until it finds another branch, and it hangs off the branch again. And that's kind of what I mean when I say you find the middle ground between plant and animal. You find the middle ground between creature and the magical middle ground that allowed the universe to connect plant and animal together, that a plant or creature can both photosynthesize and feed off other things. It's both carnivorous and not, and can feed itself, but also needs some elements in the way it evolved from living creatures. So it's just really cool, because you think about what photosynthesis is to create energy, but then also it needs more energy. So what is, these are the questions you ask that get the ball rolling for the design elements. So The questions you ask, the scientific questions, lead to the type of flower you pick, or the type of curve in the design, or the type of gesture line you use. So you can't just start here. Oh, it looks pretty. That's why I did that, because it looks pretty. That's a sign of a weaker creature design, or a designer in general. It's not just because it looks pretty. Though it's valid enough to just draw stuff because it looks pretty. Please keep drawing. Never stop drawing. But if you want to have that extra, push in your portfolio, that extra seriousness in your portfolio, if that appeals to you, ask those scientific questions. And that's why you picked this design, and that's why you thought of it. And that always looks really, really wonderful in a portfolio. I hope this was enjoyable for you guys. It was for me. I love thinking about this stuff. I hope one day we discover a planet and we watch a documentary on literally this. We watch some kind of, like 50 years from now, if I'm still alive, there's some scientists who send us back information and images about some amazing planet that literally has this in it one day. That would be so great if that was real. I hope one day that is what happens before I die. Until then, all I can do is watch Star Trek and pray for the episodes where they get to go off ship onto a planet and find all these really, really cool creatures. But this was so much fun for me. Thank you guys for joining this challenge. It was wonderful. I will host another one very soon. By the by, September is just around the corner, and you guys know what that means, right? You guys have heard of September, right? Sketchtember. Sketchtember is a month-long challenge where we sketch every single day. I will be posting an official announcement for it soon, but we have like 2 months left. We have all of August and some of July. I don't know how we're already July 10th. I don't know how that happened. But as soon as Sketchtember, as soon as September 1st, well, obviously the 31st of August, the prompts will go out. I submit the whole calendar to my Discord community. In the Discord, you'll find the Sketchtember tab. It will be posted right at the top for the September, for the Sketchtember, as a text channel. So you guys go to this little guy right here. That'll take you to my public Discord. That's where you can participate for Sketchtember. That's the next challenge. And right after that, we may have a Halloween challenge, a Halloween creature design challenge, or just like a Halloween character design challenge of some kind. Dismiss. Let's put that on snooze. So you have like maybe a month to prep. Usually what I recommend for people who are prepping for Sketchtember is start sketching now. Get comfortable with the sketching now. Get comfortable with sketching. If you guys want to see the previous year's Sketchtember designs, I made a whole video on it on my what's it called? On my previous channel. Yes, this is my second channel. There's another channel. Let me find it for you. It goes back a while. Where is it? I don't know. I don't know where it is. This is 1 year ago. Sketchtember. So you guys can see all of the Sketchtember posts that were posted last year. This is what the calendar will look like, obviously with different prompts. And this was one of my sketches, and I go through all of the different sketches that were posted. Obviously replying to each prompt, and they were posted all on the same little wall on the Discord. So please join us for Discord, join us for Sketchtember. It'll be really fun this year. I have a feeling a lot of people will join this one as well. And if you want to submit your work for critique, I critique regular art as well. Just go to my subreddit, istaback.com, subreddit icon right here. That'll take you to my subreddit, and you can submit all kinds of art for critique. Doesn't matter what your level is. It doesn't matter where you came from. You can submit your work here, and I usually pick pieces to critique on this stream. I stream every Tuesday and Thursday at 5 p.m. Eastern time. Thank you guys for watching today. I always have so much fun with the design challenges. I'll see you guys next time. Bye.